Howdy, y'all. Joe Sixpack here. Fortunate to have with me today Stefan Aarnio, who, for those of you who don't know, a truly self-made man, entrepreneur, real estate magnate, and author, most recently of a book entitled Hard Times Create Great Men. Stefan, why don't you tell our listeners here a little bit about your book and why you wrote it? I mean, it's built basically on the same premise that I have, which is the Wussification of society.
Well, yeah, Joe, the book called Hard Times Create Strong Men, and the cycles of history go: hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And right now we're at the end of that cycle in weak men creating hard times. In the last 20 years, we've seen a real fall of the Western man, turning from a competent individual into, as you say, a wussification. And what happened was I went out to the jungle to fast for 18 days. I did 18 days of no food, just water. I came back to my office in 2017, 2018, and my young 20-year-old, 22, 23, 24-year-old employees were saying, "You're mean. I don't like you. This isn't my dream job. I don't want to be doing this." And I lost my mind because I just came back from the jungle. I hadn't eaten any food. And I'm looking at these young kids, and I had to sit them down and have a How to Be a Man talk. And I gave them 6 hours of lectures, 3 hours and 3 hours one week. And then I went home, I started typing up this book. And within 11 days, it was finished. It's 624 pages, 151,000 words. And, it's been a big hit. We sold it at the first run almost right away. And I was just looking, I think we're in the top 1,000 books on Amazon right now out of 10 million books. So it's really hot right now. People are loving it. Men are loving it. And actually women love it more because they're tired of weak men. They want to date and marry men and have families and stuff. And you can't even find a real man these days. It's super hard.
Absolutely, man. You touched on a good point, I think, that you went out of country. And I think that's a lot of the problem here is you have these kids who grow up in this bubble called America, which is an anomaly in the world, and they can afford to whine about which bathroom they have to use or what they're entitled to, and it's like, man, you go out into the rest of the world, holy crap, you'll be worrying more about how you're going to survive and continue to breathe than you would be about whether you can wear a man bun and skinny jeans.
Right. Well, dude, I mean, that's a great point. And in America, we've got. You can be fat. You can be so fat you can't move. You can hang out at home and masturbate to porno all day, and the government will still send you money to live, and you can go get a $1 cheeseburger, and life is so goddamn easy in America. I'm Canadian. Same thing in Canada. If you go to Africa, they're not worried about which one of the 63 genders they are because they're trying to eat to live in Africa. If you go to India, they're not worried about 63 genders or wearing a dress or who's got lipstick and who's got makeup. They're deciding, oh my God, I have to get some rice today because life is hard. It's hard times over there, and that's what makes those people strong. And those are rising countries, man. All those countries that are on hard times right now, they're rising in freedom. They're rising in power. They're working to live and working to survive. Whereas countries like ours, like Canada, U.S., Western Europe, we're declining because it's so easy. We've got so fat. We've got so lazy, and that's how empires fall.
That's exactly right. Societies don't decline because they're too wealthy. It's that they no longer have the principles to fight for the things that they believe in. And my thing is, in this country, we've had it too good for too long in that we haven't had a serious existential threat to our existence since World War II. And I think people just don't realize that. Too good for too long.
Yeah, and that's my book opens up with D-Day. It opens up with the boats landing on the beaches and these young 15, 16, 17-year-old boys killing Nazis and fighting flamethrowers and grenades and getting shot and all this stuff. And those same boys nowadays, 80 years later, those same boys are putting on dresses and hanging out in the safe space, cry space, saying, "Mommy, come cuddle me. I don't want to get a job. This isn't my dream." Now he's got a man bun. He's working at Starbucks. And that same guy would have been killing Nazis 80 years ago. And it's not really, the man bun guy at Starbucks, it's not his fault. He doesn't even know what's going on. He's asleep. He doesn't understand. His college professors told him this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. And that's why it takes typically hard times to wake people up. When people fall on hard times, they wake up, and then the men have to become men and the women become women. I mean, it's a whole other conversation. The men aren't men anymore. The women aren't women. We've now got strong women and good men, these weak, good men, rather than strong men and good women. So we've completely reversed the genders. We've screwed it all up, and it's not going to last like this.
No, and I think a large part of that is due to the fact that, well, one of my favorite quotes is Mark Twain. I never let my schooling interfere with my education. And the point is, people are not educating their kids anymore. And I think that's where this all went wrong. They're depending on the school to educate their children. And it's like, man, schools do not educate. If anything, well, I don't even call them schools. I call them government socialist indoctrination camps. But they're taught to be wusses. The socialists are emasculating us. I mean, it's crazy, man. They have this thing in Europe called Sitzpinkeln. They're trying to make guys, and it was working. The guys were complying to sit down to take a leak. I mean, it doesn't say it all.
That's mandated.
That's exactly what it is. Absolutely incredible, wow. Man. And, I think that's, schools are what it's all about. Because if you go back to any of the dictators, whether it's Lenin or the Nazi, Hitler, they're always going for the children. And that's precisely what they're doing here. And parents are complying, man. You're supposed to have your grandfather take you out hunting and your father teach you how to build stuff. And instead, you're just getting these little wuss bags, and they can't think for themselves anywhere because the schools do not teach critical thinking anymore. They only tell them what to think.
Yeah, well, Joe, that was a big problem. When I started writing Hard Times Create Strong Men, I realized none of the young boys in my office had fathers. So the young boys didn't have fathers, so they have daddy's issues. And, you hear about girls with daddy's issues, they become strippers or prostitutes, or, they're craving male attention. That's the female going wild with daddy's issues. Well, the male going wild with daddy's issues, it looks like he doesn't know how to do his work. He can't take masculine criticism. He doesn't stick it out on his job. And that's what a male daddy's issues looks like. And so it's really interesting what you're saying about the grandpas and the fathers. They're gone. There is no dads. There is no grandfathers. There is no masculine skills. They don't teach the boys how to shoot a gun. They don't teach them how to change a tire. I don't know how to change a tire or shoot a gun myself. My dad was incompetent. So we have this tradition of being a man that has been completely thrown out the window, and we now have women raising the young boys, and then they go to their school and they have a female teacher raising the young boys again, and they never really have a masculine mentor or masculine influence, and then we end up with these men who are effectively women, and then the whole thing turns upside down and the barbarians come and raid us at some point.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. I mean, and anybody who does profess and does act the part of a man, we're thought to be like knuckle draggers and just completely out of touch with the times. It's like, no, man, the times are out of touch with me.
Well, dude, I was on an interview last week. It came out earlier this week. There's 250,000 people watching it on YouTube, and I was talking about Hard Times Create Strong Men, and they labeled me as toxic masculinity, and I'm like, dude, like toxic masculinity. I think it's the lack of masculinity that's toxic. If you look at homes without fathers, those homes do not do well. The young boys, they end up in jail. The young girls end up as strippers or prostitutes or sluts or something like that. And it's really sad because if there was a dad and if there was some masculine direction in the home, everything would be fine. But they've done that to the black people in America. They took the fathers out, and the black people are not doing very well. They took the fathers out for the white people. They've taken the churches out. So now there's no church, there's no fathers. And the people perish without something to follow. They need leadership. They need masculine direction. They need ethics. They need rules to follow. And when those things are gone, it turns into complete chaos, which is what we're living in now.
Yeah, I mean, I wear those things like badges of honor right on my shoulder, man. And then I think that's part of the problem. People are afraid to stand up and say what needs saying. But then again, that's how Donald Trump got into the White House. So obviously there's a case to be made for it. And all of this is, by design. It's not like, oops, this just happened. This was all done over the course of the past 30, 40 years.
It's been 60, actually, Joe. Since 1960, I got the graph in my book. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. That cycle in 1940 was hard times create strong men with D-Day. And then you go 20 years in the future, every 20 years, the cycle changes. It goes to hard times create strong men to strong men create good times, which is the 60s. Good times create weak men was the 80s. And then weak men create hard times has been 2000 to 2020. So we're ready for another hard time right now. And it has been a slow decline since the height of 1960. Like after the war, America was rich. The West was rich. We had all the factories. We had all the money. The money was gold. Everything was really tickety-boo. And then what happens is when you get really rich and you're on good times, the women take over. And you start seeing the feminine policies come in. And I think it was Aristotle who said, masculine republics give way to feminine democracies, which give way to tyranny. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The masculine republic is, I'd say effectively turning into a feminine democracy where we have people, almost like it's like a mental institution right now where the craziest, most mental people are screaming at the top of their lungs on every social platform. And we're making way for every single person, every single minority, to the point of people that don't even have a real percentage point of representation have huge overrepresentation in the media. And we have this very strange time where it's hostile to be a man. If you're just a regular guy and you want to have a regular family and you want to protect your family and keep them out of the indoctrination camps, you're a wacko, you're a psycho, you're racist, sexist, homophobe, Islamophobe, every phobe. And, you see that right now with Donald Trump. He's the president, and he's simply trying to do his job. And if it was the 70s, it'd be totally fine. Nobody would beat on Trump. He'd be amazing. But today in 2019, you can't be a man anymore. It is not allowed.
Yeah, I mean, the entire political spectrum has shifted. The Republicans today are what the Democrats were 40 years ago, and the Democrats of today are the basically socialist Democrats of America.
Bro. Like Comrade Sanders and Comrade AOC.
Can you believe that, man? I mean, when I was a kid, never would you have heard, and anybody who called anybody a socialist would be thought to be a wacko because, it's so far off the charts.
In the 60s, they would have put you in jail. They would have said, hey, man, this is treason against the country, and they would throw you in jail. And nowadays, that philosophy came into the universities, and we traded free market capitalism, Christianity, Judeo-Christian values, and marriage for communism, feminism, atheism. So we took the three things that made the West work, we flipped it upside down, and now we're going to see the West fall down because the three things that built it, and you turn those three things that built it to the opposite, the table is going to fall off. You take the legs off the table.
Yeah, but that's exactly what they want. And it's just all, as in with everything with socialism, it's all about power. And so they're chipping away at the fabric of our society every way they can, whether it's gun control, whether it's nonviolence, all, the talking points. I mean, I have them all in my book. I broke them all down. And that's, you got to tie all of those things together. And that's what a lot of people don't understand or realize, that this is all being done by design, long-term, at every aspect of our society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's engineering, man. And it's there to create a 1984 environment or a Brave New World environment where everybody's separate, everybody's isolated. There is no more families. There is no more love. There is no more children. And, it's really scary, actually, because I was on this show debating last week in LA. And I said, if you take a woman and you put her into a career, well, now she's not having children. They say, well, yeah, she can work too. It's like, well, dude, now she's paying taxes. Now she probably makes less. And it's not because she's not as smart. It's just the male work ethic is insane. We do nothing but work. And women, they want to have lives. So there's a difference there. And then suddenly no one's having babies. And when you take the women and you put them on the front lines with the men in the wars and the paramilitary and the job world, that's the mark of a dying civilization, because nobody raises children now. Who's going to do that? The government? Who's going to do that? Are we going to grow them in test tubes? That's literally the end of the line for civilization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. It's a pretty sick situation. When I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, never could have imagined. I mean, that's why I wrote my book. I came back here after being abroad for 11 years. And it blew me away from 2000 to 2010, how much socialism had just engulfed so much of the society. It blew me away. And that's why I wrote the book, to try to get to the kids. So let me ask you this. How come a couple of yeggs like you and me can figure this stuff out, but nobody on the Republican side is talking about this? I can understand the other side, not giving any credence to it or anything, but how come nobody on the right's talking about this stuff when it's so obvious to a couple of Joes like you and me?
Well, I think there's a bit of a witch hunt out for people like us. It's interesting, man. I mean, I was on this
Bring
show
it
in
on.
LA, and the guy looks at me and says, "Are you a homophobe?" I'm like, "Bro, I'm not talking about homophobe." I'm like, "No, you can suck anyone's dick you want. It's up to you." But at the end of the day, this is such an unpopular view right now. It's so far out of the popular discourse, the popular narrative, that it's fringe, and it's really sad. You know, even a guy like the President Trump, he gets attacked by his own media. And, you know, if he was Putin, he'd throw those media people in jail and kill them all. But we live in a free society, and he sits at home on his Twitter account trying to defend himself because we have a totally screwed up, upside down, and backwards society. It's really, really sad because it won't last very long, and it will turn into tyranny at some point.
And I agree, but the only thing that I would say is that to counter that, you know, Trump won, and he's going to win again. I think it was Osama bin Laden who said it best when he said, when people see a strong horse and a weak horse, they naturally gravitate to the strong horse. And I think that's why, you know, you had these other wimps that they were putting up like McCain and Romney who were afraid to touch anybody with kid gloves. And you got this guy who's like a brawler. You know, bring it on, man. You give me one, I'm taking 10 on you. And that resonates. And that resonates exactly. It goes hand in hand with what you're saying about men. They're out there, but they're afraid. And instead of being afraid, they should be doing what you and I are doing and wearing that like a badge of honor, don't you think?
It's the new freedom fighters, man.
Yeah,
the new freedom fighters, and it's a very small, niche, unpopular thing. But people know something's wrong, man. It's really interesting. Like, we thought we'd get a bunch of hate on that show last week. We didn't get much hate because even though we say things that are against the discourse, the men and women both know that it's right, and they know that they do want men, and they don't really understand the problem because it's a complex problem, but they know in their heart what is right and what they really want.
absolutely, man. The truth will out. That's what it all comes down to. So,
Awesome.
hey,
Joe, I got to run to my next thing here, bro. It's been great being on your show, though, dude. Thanks so much.
absolutely.
And
do it again.
we should collab more, man.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
All the best. This is Joe Sixpack over and out. Just like to repeat for you, capitalism creates and socialism stultifies. Therefore, capitalism is cool and socialism sucks.